Welcome to Spooky Season, Sky Watchers. October means earlier nightfall and lots of meteor showers to light up both the morning and evening skies. We're gonna waste no time discovering one of them by transporting outside and looking up. We're here outside of the dome at the Danville Science Center. It has been turned to face the northern sky, placing east to the right and west to the left. As we move to just after sunset this evening, look to the west for shooting stars appearing to streak out from the celestial serpent, Draco the dragon. Aristophanes associated Draco with Ladon, the dragon whom Heracles had to defeat to obtain the golden apples as part of his 12 trials. To this day, Hercules can be seen with his foot upon the dragon's head. Other Greeks saw Draco as representing one of the giants that fought the gods in the 10-year war called the Gigantomachy. The beast was eventually defeated by goddess Athena, who threw the dragon into the sky and saw it twist up on itself and freeze into position as it approached the celestial North Pole. Draco remains in a twisted S shape. The Draconid meteor shower lasts through the 10th, but it peaks tonight shortly after dusk, around 9 p.m. for us here in Danville. Tomorrow night-ish, shortly after midnight, we can find another giant that has returned to the dark skies. Gas giant Jupiter. Jupiter enters retrograde tomorrow. Instead of taking its usual eastward path through the sky, it will appear to move westward. This phenomenon happens with all of the outer planets: Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. As Earth moves around the sun, our perspective changes, which causes the apparent position of objects to move. Jupiter will continue to appear to be traveling westward until it exits retrograde in February. Throughout October dark skies can be found familiar Orion the Hunter, forever battling Taurus the Bull, which holds M45 the Pleiades in its broad shoulder. Right above both of these can be found Perseus, a legendary Greek hero who rose to fame by beheading the Gorgon Medusa, whose very gaze turned to stone all who looked upon it. The Perseus constellation holds the Gorgon's head in its lower hand, represented by the star Algol. When ancient peoples gazed upon Algol, they too were petrified. We now know that Algol is part of a variable star system made up of two stars that orbit each other. One star passes in front of and eclipses the light of the other every 2.87 days. This dimming of the star was attributed to bad happenings, thus its name, which means demon or the ghoul. Stars can also dim when planets pass in front of them. That's one of the ways that astronomers discover new exoplanets. If the light of a distant star dims a certain way in a consistent pattern, then it's likely due to an item orbiting it. Large enough and not a star, it could be a planet. From there, scientists analyze further data to determine if an exoplanet could possess water and an atmosphere, and therefore possibly be habitable. The question of is there life outside of our planet seems to be a fairly universal one. It's one of those questions that just is. Many people have answered in many ways, including several past presidents. March 20th, 1966, Michigan, around 8:30 p.m. Farmer Frank Manor notices strange lights in his yard and decides to investigate, taking along his son. They discover an unknown object has landed in their yard before taking off and leaving. Concerned, Frank contacts the local police, who, instead of mocking, confirm that they too have witnessed an unrecognizable flying object. Reports of such sightings have been occurring all week. Sightings continued and spread. One college student 50 miles away reported a sighting that was also confirmed by police. Attention grew to a national level as the credibility of eyewitness accounts was deemed high. 5 days later, March the 25th, then Senate House Minority Leader Gerald R. Ford proposed the first congressional investigation into the presence of UFOs. This resulted in a federal investigation led by the Air Force that included scientists and scholars. The resultant official statement as to what had happened, given by astrophysicist J. Allen Hynek, was that the lights seen were a combination of swamp gas and the transit of Jupiter. Decaying vegetation in low-lying swamps can get trapped in frozen water in the winter. In the spring, the ice thaws, releasing the gases, which can produce light and sound in the process. This, combined with a passing gas giant, is what Michiganders had been seeing. At least, that was the official answer. Unsatisfied with the Air Force's findings, 2B President Ford described the swamp gas theory as flippant. Among other platforms in 1976, would-be President Jimmy Carter promised, "If I become president, I'll make every piece of information this country has about UFO sightings available to the public and the scientists." This may have been because he claimed to have seen one himself several years ago with a few buddies in Georgia. Hanging outside a Lions Club on a cool January night, a dozen men all claimed to have witnessed the same bright disk, zooming towards them and then flying away, flashing red and blue. Carter was one of the dozen. It took half a century for an official explanation for the sighting to surface. In 2016, ex-Air Force scientist Jerry Justice read Carter's original report and identified what had been described as likely a high-altitude barium cloud released by an Air Force rocket. The scientist searched the records and was able to pinpoint a launch that coincided with Carter's 1969 account. In 1974, flying over Bakersfield, California on an Air Force training mission, a pilot noticed, quote, a fairly steady light until it began to accelerate. Then it appeared to elongate. Then the light took off. The UFO went from a normal cruise speed to a fantastic speed instantly. If you give an airplane power, it will accelerate, but not like a hot rod, and that's what this was like. Another passenger on the mission described the event saying, it went straight up into the heavens. That passenger was Ronald Reagan. While in office, President Reagan created the Citizens Advisory Council on National Space Policy. One council member described the group as a raucous bunch with feisty opinions. We met at the spacious home of science fiction author Larry Niven. The men mostly talked hard-edge tech, the women, policy. Finally, we settled on recommending a position claiming at least the moral high ground, if not high orbits. Defense was inevitably more stabilizing than relying on hair-trigger offense, we argued. From the committee's recommendation, Reagan proposed the Strategic Defense Initiative, or SDI. The initiative intended to intercept incoming aerial threats through the use of a series of Earth, and yes, space-based lasers. Reporters at the time nicknamed the proposal the Star Wars Initiative. President Bill Clinton ended SDI in 1993. President Reagan was so concerned with the potential threat of extra foreign invasion that he was recorded asking then President Mikhail Gorbachev, what would you do if the United States was suddenly attacked by someone from outer space? Would you help us? Reagan's persistence may have not been without warrant. Some warrant. In 2021, 60 Minutes aired a story about a report from the Director of United States National Intelligence about the existence and prevalence of unidentified aerial phenomenon. In response to the piece, former President Barack Obama shared, there is footage and records of objects in the skies that we don't know exactly what they are. We can't explain how they move, their trajectory. They did not have an easily explainable pattern. And so, I think that people still take seriously trying to investigate and figure out what that is. Representatives for the Office of National Intelligence went on to state that the presence of UAPs can less likely be attributed to alien invaders and more likely to be the result of advancing defense technologies of Earth-based foreign threats. On June 9, 2022, NASA announced that it had developed its own independent study team to investigate unidentified aerial phenomena. The team released its final report on May of last year, detailing methods and strategies for advancing understandings of UAPs going forward. The full report can be found at science.nasa.gov/UAP. Do you have thoughts on unidentified flying craft and extraplanetary life? We invite you to share them in civil, thoughtful discussion in the comments section of this video. We also invite you to join us again for next month's Stream Into the Void, the second Tuesday of November, November the 12th, 1 week after Election Day. Until then, Sky Watchers, thanks for watching and keep discovering.